As we enter the final stretch of episodes, Lami goes around using her pet silkworm to drain the life force of various kids to speed up its own growth. Bandora planning to use the moth, once it's grown, to control everyone it's fed on to attack the adults.
Except, wouldn't it be smarter to, say, drain and then control adults as they have access to a wider variety of implements to hurt children and other adults with? Hell, drain the right ones, and she can make children's lives utter hell perpetually. You're thinking too small, dude! Widen your target variety if you want to deal some real pain. This is why I miss the Crisis Empire when doing a show like this. They were morons, but at least they had variety in their schemes.
Still, Mei once more proves herself as the most on-point of the core Zyuranger, catching on to Lami's activities, only to get her dino buckler covered in silly string sticky enough to prevent her from removing it from her belt, thus leaving her unable to transform.
Wow, is that a design flaw? Come to think of it, I'm amazed no shocker organization ever tried to jam up a rider belt like that, to my memory at least. 450 Showa Rider episodes like that tends to blur together after a point.
On top of this, Dora's Silk Kiss similarly entombs the others in silly string, and Burai is unavailable, which leaves Mei to undergo a new transformation! The horror! The unadulterated PG-13 horror! This is actually a recurring Sentai tradition, going all the way back to Go Ranger. Sentai's Pink Rangers, sometimes the other colors too if they lack a Pink Ranger, have a tendency to be disguise or infiltration experts. Thus, every now and then, they create quick change episodes, where they end up going through multiple costume swaps in an endeavor to baffle or counteract the plan of the week, which may also involve the villain going through a series of quick changes as well. It's something that has never been adapted into Power Rangers, usually as with how the series are rejiggered, it's something that'd be hard to justify and explain being a recurring homage.
There, sure glad I don't look stupid in this.
Seen, of course, in that fucking stupid episode of Megaforce, where they only did that because the relevant Gokaiger episode they ripped off ended with a combat tribute to Aba Ranger, so as to lampshade the last of Aheim's quick changes being that of the not actually a Sentai member Abare Pink. Even though Megaforce just straight up reshot all of the Aba Ranger Gokai change fight footage that was in the episode anyways for their own tribute to Dead Out of Thunder, because it was entirely unusable for their purposes, meaning their bastardization of that tribute plot is straight up asinine, and unnecessary because it had nothing to do with why they even used it in the first place.
Power Rangers Megaforce! Your gift wrapped the perfect anniversary series, and you fucked it up!
Anyways, Lami and Mei make with the rapid clothing swaps, Mei countering each of Lami's undercover attempts to suck people dry, which buys enough time for the others to break free, and help her get her buckler unglooped, which just leaves them to burn the Mothman prophecies and get on with their day. Though to complement this episode, the next one is also a traditional it's not an evil monster plot, which is played more straight than with the elf earlier in the series, a group of hunters disturbing the subterranean-dwelling Goda, which the Zyuranger think is another Dora monster, only to be stopped by this kid, which was saved by the Goda after a rock slide.
Wait a second, I know those lips! Dear sanity of all the things to recognize as a defining characteristic.
And yes, this is Shin Nagahama, who 2 decades later would go on to play Akira Nijino, the only character I did want to at some point throttle in Resha Sentai Tokyuger. He is also the only actor I can find amongst the child guest cast listings that actually had a career after appearing in this show. Anyways, the Goda is actually up trying to reclaim its eggs, which were thrown up above the ground during a recent earthquake. Earthquakes do not work that way. Which Bandora then uses against them to trick it into fighting the Zyuranger by making the Goda think the Zyuranger had been breaking them.
A bit ironic considering breaking the eggs of ancient creatures would not long after be revealed as part of the origin story for Bandora.
Unfortunately, the Zyuranger are forced to put it down after it's driven mad by Bandora's magics, but Proto-Akira manages to save one of its offspring, promising to care for it so the species will live on. Burai, now down to 4 hours, begins to have vivid dreams of his impending death, the candle almost burned out, and Clotho appearing to tell him that the next time he leaves the lapseless room, he will never be able to return to it.
That is a dick move, Life Spirit. Dick move.
And, of course, The Zyuranger have made absolutely no effort in their spare time to try and find a solution to Burai's waning life, since it was brought up with Dora Narcissus.
Folks, they just did not care!
Only Bars has put in any time to try and research one, the reminder of this approaching deadline finally spurring them into action, which facilitates forcing the audience to sit through a badly edited clip show. Seriously, it's pretty damn awful. Bandora instigates the attack to draw Burai out, and then scry for the location of the Lapsus room so she can destroy it, a plan made she didn't try far earlier than this. While another of Burai's dreams reveals that a child is also awaiting his own death.
Except he wasn't. At all. I'll get back to this.
As Bandora's plan involves having Dragon Caesar attack Tokyo. Daizujin's called out to bring it under control, and when they call out Burai to get it to stop, another Dragon Caesar appears.
It's a fake!
Yep, this is Dora Kinkaku, aka Dora Fake, who can copy the form of anything it wants to. And this has given Bandora the opportunity she desired to destroy the Lapsless room, leaving Burai less than 4 hours to live.
Considering the general Asian phobia concerning the number 4 as being representative of death, that's pretty appropriate.
But this is where Burai comes into contact with the boy from his vision, who happens to be a fan of him as Dragon Ranger. Like everyone that watched this show by this point. He lets the kid live the dream of stomping around on top of Dragon Caesar. The Zyuranger's last-minute cram session allows them to come across the tale of the Water of Life, which Shout Factory subs have translated as Elixir of Life, despite the word elixir never once being spoken by any of the cast. And the location they go to get it at is a spring, as this is a reference to the Fountain of Youth.
The Elixir of Life, however, is a completely different fictional reference entirely, being an alchemical concoction meant to artificially recreate said mythical water. If it's naturally coming from a spring, it is not the Elixir of Life.
Oh, and the Guardian Beasts and Clotho knew of the water all along. Because the gods in this series are assholes. And I say that as upon wanting to go claim the water to try and use it to fix Burai's time, they take their dino bucklers. Why? No reason!
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal!
Seriously, they do this for no reason. Due to how they chose to revive Burai, the Water of Life will not work on him. They could have done nothing. Let the Zyuranger go to the water, take it to Burai, and discover this, and fewer people would have been injured and died in the battle that comes during this while they have lost their powers. The only other option is they are straight up lying to them about this, and are obstructing them from saving Burai.
You see, they just didn't care.
While they're busy with that, Burai comes under attack by Dora Gansaku, taking the form of Goryujin. The clashing dragon mechs cause the populace to show they are in fact more stupid than the Zyuranger, and stupidly attack the Zyuranger, even though the populace previously saw the fake mechs and the monster to know that this is a shape-shifting monster actually doing all of this.
Haven't you been paying any attention today?
However, the kid Kota ends up crushed under some of the debris in the battle.
And this is where I pop in and call it the ones actually responsible for this. The Guardian Beasts.
See, this kid would not have been put in any danger at all if he were not near the battle, and he would have not been anywhere near the battle had he not been out having fun with Burai, and he wouldn't have been out having fun with Burai if Burai didn't notice and try to befriend him, and that would not have happened had the vision of Burai's death not included the kid in the first place.
Ergo, by giving Burai the prophetic vision of this boy dying, the gods set up the entire situation which would lead to his death. Coupled with their past insensitivity to anyone and thing dying if it's not one of their minions or of their race, remind me again, why are we siding with them over Great Satan's forces when they are just as callous and dismissive of life? Hell, if they actually were lying about the water, it's more evidence of them possibly being just as evil as Great Satan, only lawful evil instead of chaotic.
And this would have been mediated entirely had it been instead a terminal illness that would have killed the boy in time, but the Water of Life could have healed him of that, which Burai would choose to give in a selfless act. That would have been a far better, more tangibly noble endeavor instead of appeasing the guilt he shouldn't have in the first place. Burai tries the same thing Geki did earlier and gives the boy his dragon metal to try and heal him, but for no explained reason it does not work. Which invalidates the time it did work, but whatever. Goshi and Dan make it to the water, but are stalled from getting it by Clotho, because the gods are assholes. While Burai boards Dragon Caesar sans his powers to properly fight Dora Gansaku, the event's time-sweeping ahead to the point he's gone from an hour of time left to 10 minutes. Clotho chooses now to reveal the uselessness of the water, giving it to them to save the boy they used in their plans to facilitate Burai's death.
All in all, 100% successful trip.
Burai in turn says he no longer cares for his own life, which restores the other's gear, and together they take down the monster. Burai asks they give the water to Kota to fix him, and with the little time he has, he transfers the Zyusoken and dragon armor to Geki, so they can survive against Bandora, telling him that though they were only united for a short time, he treasured the time he had with his brother. And now, as death takes him, he sees no one else awaiting their turn for death to claim them, awaiting transport to the afterlife along the way.
And to just show how much of a breakout character Burai was in all of this episode, Burai Dies, was the highest rated Zyuranger episode by a pretty significant margin, holding 13.2% of total television viewership in its time slot, a difference of over 6% of the series' average of 7.1%, and still beating out the next highest rated episodes of 10% from the second and third episodes at the beginning of the series, May's Quick Change episode, and of all things the clip show episode that started off this last arc, which hit almost 11%. More people cared about and tuned in to see Burai die than everything else in the show.
And it's not just forgotten, as Dragon Caesar, a full third of the god entity that is Daijujin, is shown taking Burai's death very hard, despite, again, being part of the entity which caused his state of pending death in the first place. A new monster, Dora Antaeus, appears, but is quickly blown away, the sixth mech feeling further ostracized by, for the first time in the series, the Zyuranger are shown praising their mechanical gods for their capability in battle, but leave him out. Geki then proceeds to say the absolute most insensitive thing he could possibly say to the giant Mechagodzilla homage.
You have absolutely no tact, do you? You know, I should be saying that he should be taking this hard too, but, well, with Burai's death time limit, they've pretty much spent no bonding time with each other out of battle to build any of that.
And likewise, the reminiscent scenes of Dragon Caesar with Burai are impossible to have happened due to how Burai needed to stick himself in the lapseless room immediately after each battle or quest was over to conserve his remaining life, so would not have had any opportunity to have downtime bonding time with the mech either, since they didn't know each other until the modern age, and not at all 170 million years in the past, as he didn't have the Suzoken back then.
I'm not saying Dragon Caesar's grief is invalid, since it is a decent story point and, for lack of a better term, humanization for this sentient demigod, but it's once more an example of the series' narrative disconnects with its characters and the relevant continuity.
Still, this leads to resolution for this plot when Geki later retracts pretty much everything he's ever said to get Dragon Caesar to help them against the monster they defeated earlier, which is shown, thanks to a special heart component, is able to recover and adapt itself to any attack the Zyuranger deal to it. Wow, that is one strong heart. One might call it a super-evolved heart? And yeah, this is where Geki first uses the dragon armor to pull free the heart, so the others can destroy the monster with ultimate Daijujin. Gotta say, the Kalima strategy isn't one you usually see employed to get rid of a monster like this. I've taken a lot of shots at Shout Factory over these videos, but I gotta give them credit over something Funimation with Tiga skimped on. They actually translated and inserted the lyrics to insert music, such as this pop star that has her talent stolen, along with the rest of her by Dora Chimera, who Bandora has ordered to take into itself all of the people idolized for their talent and abilities, so there will be no one for children to look up and idolize.
Except for their parents, and fictional characters, and people who are kind to them but don't possess any innate talent, and yeah, the only way this plan works is if it absorbs literally everyone. This is yet another plot I saw the Crisis Empire do better when they disguised a monster as the wrestler Great Mask, and had defeat talented sports stars to take that idolization and then use it to brainwash people. As there, it's an eventual means to an end.
Here it's pretty much for its own sake, when it really should be taken in the context it's gathering these skills for eventual use in fighting the Zyuranger. As after it's found out while trying to take into itself a rising kendo star, that's actually what Dora Chimera ends up using all of its stolen powers for. Goshi ends up getting into a squabble with said kendo star about being able to defend herself, so doesn't need Goshi to do it for her, not realizing it's more of a duty thing than it is a sexism thing. She challenges him to a match to show her skills, only for her to be shown to not be anywhere near a match for the monster, as it just straight up possesses her so as to use her body to kill Goshi in a very violating manner. Also, Goshi, that is not how you perform a blade catch. That is the exact opposite of performing a blade catch. That is how you lose your hands entirely by having them lopped off.
Well, okay, the whole blade catch thing is a myth anyways, as the commonly showcased clap your hands to stop the sword is a complete fabrication. And the real technique was developed to stop an enemy from drawing his sword as opposed to catching it, or alternatively to dodge and then disarm. But still, even for the pop culture reference being made, you're doing it wrong.
But yeah, Goshi gives the girl a talk, manages to get the Chimera out of her, they kill it, happy ending. I'm not even bothering recapping episode 45. It's just a ridiculously bad environmentalism message episode, where an over-environmentally focused brat comes into collusion with a Dora monster to punish those who litter, and the child preventing the Zyuranger from killing it, thus allowing him to facilitate inflicting himself and his viewpoint on others.
I can see where they went back to the well for the eventual development of Futaro.
For there is no easier way for a message to be lost than the messenger to be a complete, utter, and total jackass. The only thing of real note here is, for the only time in the series, the Zyuranger formed the Riding King Brachion formation, where normal Daizujin is in the chariot sans equipment from Dragon Caesar, which allows it to be far more mobile in its counterattacks. Episode 46 is the last before the ending arc of the series gets underway, and it's once more a Sentai tradition, the Evil Ranger episode. As I addressed both when I reviewed Jetman and Mega Ranger, while the only true evil Sentai team is the Neji Ranger, since I see the Flowering Kunoichi girls as more a specialized mook, Sentai would often produce one-off episodes of a given team fighting doppelgangers, clones, or power thieves that take on the form of their powers. And this time, Bandora does this by using the power of Dora Mirage to disguise her golems as the team and send them out killing things. Of course, since the whims of the populace of the Toei universe are so fleeting without real justification in any series Shirakura helms, they instantly believe without hesitation or explanation that the people who have been protecting them all series must now be evil and have always been evil. I really do not like it when they pull this plot. They really don't even try to arrest or censor the Zyuranger. They just throw rocks and rancid vegetables at them. A group that they're terrified of because they went out and attacked and injured people. Thus, if they were really evil, that would be the exact wrong thing to do to them. Unless, they tried those tactics on the monsters. But then again, we never see that. As if it's done to someone that actually is evil, that would be grounds for those people to be recipients of a Darwin Award. The Zyuranger and their needless demoralization get taken in by an old lady who's reminded of her kids by the group, and the rematch faces off with their clones in plain view of the populace, who realize what went down. Even though before, when they tried this, Dora Mirage just made a lot of them look like innocent bystanders to frame them when they tried fighting them off, so what the hell? Is that something it can only pull once, or did it not realize there would be people watching until it was too late to pull that? Well, with that done, it's time for the end of the world!
Wait, no. Bandora never once comes anywhere near actually pulling that off.
As the eggs enter their last month before hatching, Gek and the others visit a hospitalized kid suffering from, well, whatever it is, his illness can only be overcome by keeping his morale and will strong. Geki saying he should be like the dinosaurs.
でも滅びちゃったじゃないか。いくら強くったって死んじゃうんだ。
Wow, Geki, you are bad at this.
However, everything in the region is hit by a massive series of earthquakes, which even reach the moon? Earthquakes really do not work that way. The Guardian Beasts realize this is an omen for the end times, sending Barza a special book, as Geki and Mei see the kids they were with abducted by...
Yep, the Zyuranger's final enemy is a kid, who they have to kill to defeat Great Satan. Makes total sense to me.
And of course, the brat kicks their asses with magic before transporting himself to Bandora Palace, revealing...
Mama.
Yeah, this is Kai, revived by Great Satan for this final siege on the Guardian Beasts and Zyuranger. Once more showcasing that these entities had the power to do this, even with Burai, but just chose not to. Granted, Kai is full-on evil and disdainful of Bandora, who wants to do nothing but hold her son, though I can see that being a bit of pragmatism due to a later event, except it actually plays a big part in their downfall by demoralizing and berating Bandora when what she wanted all along was in her grasp, so it eventually results in their total, absolute irreparable defeat.
僕はもうママの子じゃないんだよ。大サタンが蘇らせてくれたんだ。だから僕は今は悪魔の子供なのさ。
I'll get back to this. However, from the scenes in these episodes, it once more backs up what I was implying when I spoiled her motivations at the beginning of this. She would have been happy solely to have her son back. Could none of the supposedly allied gods and spirits of the Zyuranger worked something out with her back in that time?
This is the third series I've reviewed where its events are motivated by the antagonist of it losing family, and their crusade involving as their end goal their return, and it's still only .hack GU that pulls that kind of story off competently, as it doesn't present the journey to regain them as asinine. Barza is stuck translating the book the gods sent, because they didn't think to send a copy of it he could read, while Bandora brings her palace back down to Earth using stock footage, which draws out the Zyuranger so they can be confronted by Kai and his mech, Dora Talos.
Oh hell yes, I want one. It's legitimately the best designed thing in this series.
Seriously, it's like the Unicorn Gundam had sex with the Guyver and Tekkaman Blade. It's just plain awesome!
Oh, now you decide to knock it off with the censoring.
The kidnapped kids are shown to be Kai's secondary controllers for the mech, which goes badly for the Zyuranger, forcing them to call upon King Brachion, and thus fall for the trap. For as I said far earlier, this is the point at which they retcon in that killing the dinosaur eggs will in turn kill the gods that take the form of the Guardian Beasts.
And no, I still don't get this. Are they like a physical manifestation of the collective unconsciousness and amalgamated souls of the dinosaur race, like Alaya is in the Fate series, so are only tethered to this plane of existence as long as the races live? Even if they go by that, only 3, technically 4 if you count Dragon Caesar as another T-Rex, of the 7 of them were actually dinosaurs. Why would you? The fact was not part of the series until this very moment.
But yeah, this plot in separating Brachion from the rest succeeds, presumably killing it, and with him the eggs and how after it's dragged under an explosion occurs. However, this is then contradicted in how the rest of the godly mechs still have power, even though the eggs and Brachion are presumed dead. It's the instant tip-off to them not being dead by this show's own suddenly their rules. Still, without Brachion, Daizujin will not have the power to properly counter Great Satan, who Bandora proceeds to summon without any of the things she previously needed as reagents to call him into the world, bar of course the pillar. Then again, I guess Kai, as he has Great Satan's essence in him, could have been used as a conduit, but consistency and explanation are all I ask for. Dora Talos returns as Great Satan proceeds to poison the world around him, weakening the mechs further, so they are carved up and destroyed. Except not really. Geki tries to rally them around the idea that the gods will revive, without actually knowing nor explaining that they aren't really dead in the first place, which once again shows him as bad at this over saying something to the effect of, "We'll fight until there's nothing left!"
Because if we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it.
Because that is what they end up doing, after learning that lesson from one of the child guest actors again. Unfortunately, they find that they cannot transform.
It's Except their transformation abilities were not tied to the guardian beasts before this. They were brought from the innate magical powers of the dino metals, which recharged themselves the same way the mechs did. And the guardian beasts are not actually dead, they've been captured. So even by this logic, should also not leave them depowered and helpless. I mean it didn't the last time the mechs were all thought to be dead but weren't. Why would this time be different?
Though really, I can give it a bye, as the Zyuranger then proceed to pretty much say in their own words what I've had as my issues with this show. Yep, this certainly is their lowest point. Deus Ex Machina no Jutsu! Yes, Burai comes to them from the afterlife, inexplicably out of nowhere, simply to tell them to not give up hope, and that the gods are alive in a pocket dimension they need to quest to reach. But if they get lost inside, they'll be lost forever.
You really haven't. I mean, you've not been as bad as, say, Tokusatsu or Ninja about it, where one person literally steals the other powers to strengthen themselves, or the other leaves the lot of them as unable to learn the damn teamwork lesson despite them reteaching it to their group 6 fucking times. But it's not been that prominent an element for this team, though that's mainly due to how little we have seen them develop.
Well, in this case, the showcased teamwork is tying themselves to a climbing wire so they'll all stay connected, and unable to be lost in that other dimension. May and Boy keeping the line home connected, only for Dora Monster Phantoms to appear in this realm and attack them, threatening the line home. Unfortunately, Barza intercedes as May and Boy try to keep the rest from falling into the abyss, having them tie it to its flimsy staff, which soon likewise begins to break. He thus tries to remember a magic spell to make it stronger.
That is not a spell! Hell, that is not something that a magic user would forget without tipping them off to something being wrong if they couldn't recall such common, simple words.
Bandora, in comparison, has used long incantations of purportedly nonsense words that tap into sources of otherworldly power. And you're now showing that the magic user, who's only not a magic user because he had that knowledge ripped out of his head millions of years ago, has had his spells all tied to common words he would have used in his common vocabulary as a servant to dinosaur-based gods?
They just didn't care! We rest our case. What do you think, sirs?
The Magic Ranger are looking at you and laughing.
The trio find the soap bubbles the mechs are stored in, and though Bandora's forces try to stop them, they are ultimately unsuccessful. The toys are freed from their minted bubble status, and return to Earth to settle things for all time with Doro Talos, Kai, and Great Satan. And again, this is achieved by murdering a child. Evil! Justice wins! However, as said, this whole plan is one that ends up shooting Great Satan in the foot with its fallout. For as Kai dies again, it's in Bandora's arms, the witch pleading with him to stay with her, tears falling from her eyes. Unfortunately, this has moved Bandora to the next stage in the cycle of grief, as internalizing her pain of loss means she has now lost her powers as a witch, meaning Great Satan's sole servant is forevermore incapable of calling upon its power or summoning it back to the world. Thus, Daijujin decides to just get rid of the lot of them, sealing them all back into a canister and throwing them back into space. Just pretty much how this all started. The gods are dicks. So now, the Zyuranger's job is done, the eggs return to them. They soon after hatching, beginning the eventual Jurassic Park. As for Bandora, her troop are shown settling into their lot in life, Bandora swearing vengeance once more, only to lose sight of that when it's revealed that Grifforza and Lammy went and had a kid, which Bandora proceeds to dote on as if she were its grandmother. "21
years later, an entity some believe to be this child, or potentially a clone of him possessed by Great Satan, would come to Earth with other anti-dinosaur entities in a bid to try and cause an extinction-level event.
Still, the dinosaurs are left in the care of the kid, who now, by seeing them, gets over his illness.
Animal control would later be called after reports circulated of reptilian carnivores eating children alive.
As the rest of them in turn proceed to move on from this plane of existence to rejoin everyone that's waited for them in the afterlife for eons of time.
And that was Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. It's mostly harmless.
While I just generally don't like it, I'd still recommend checking out the show after Burai comes into things, as it's not downright awful, just stupidly written far too much of the time. But as I hope I've established, I do not like kid plots, which this show runs off of. I do not like how narratively unjustified a lot of the tales under Shinichiro Shirakura turn out with a failing to validate the arc, setting, and characterization, as without those, what they attempt to do is not reflective of what they can do. Simply put, Shirakura doesn't care about that stuff, only the spectacle, so doesn't allow the writers under him to build such very well. This is simply an earlier precursor to the problems of series he'd helm, such as Agato or the Tyson films, which make them narratively unappealing to me and at times outright offensive. To be clear, that does not happen here at all. The only thing I'm insulted by is how they seem to write down to their audience instead of just scripting a competent story. Children aren't intrinsically imbeciles. They're just different, so you don't need to treat them as if they are imbeciles, especially when you write them to often be smarter than the lead characters. As by not doing that, they can come back to the show when they're older and find new ways to appreciate it.
Though, something that's kind of amusing, this issue of Zyuranger's storytelling, specifically its reliance on Deus Ex Machina to solve its problems, this gets brought up again. In Gokaiger.
In which, at the end of the series, after grading the greater powers of every Sentai team before them, the Gokaiger were handed a Deus Ex Machina that could solve all of their problems. And the Zyuranger team rep, Goshi, is the one that comes to them in the middle of the battle and tells them to just go ahead and use it to solve all their problems with literally no effort, instead of completing the character journey they were supposed to be on. It actually further accents the symbolic event of destroying that Deus Ex Machina and achieving their victory with their own hands, as it's in direct defiance and opposition to the main issue of the Sentai team who told them to do it suffered under. That even though they did at times work for what they gained, the majority of the time they were just given their victories.
The writer for that episode, by the way, was Naruhisa Arakawa, who, as said, worked on this show as well, and thus it's potentially reflective of him being aware of this problem and calling it out. It could also be a coincidence, certainly. I just think it makes that event a bit more special, while also in a way defining Zyuranger's greater power as Deus Ex Machina.
The Burai episodes are honestly the best parts of it because they are the only story arc the show has, and I feel they put more effort into them than a lot of the other parts of the show, even though he is only there to again and again be the news source of how the day is saved. Beyond Burai, I did have an appreciation of the villains as they were consistently clever, if albeit narrow in their focus of torment, and their goals were, well, pretty short-sighted and petty. And as said, I did end up liking Mei simply due to the consistent showcasing of competency beyond that of her peers. Dan annoyed me as he acted half his age, Boy was for the most part just there, Goshi, while showcased to be an intelligent individual, rarely seemed to act it, and Geki, pretty much every time he tried to be a leader and be a rallying point of morale, he would end up only saying the exact wrong thing for the situation they found themselves in. Open mouth, insert foot. The Guardian Beasts themselves, however, are classics, though would be more immortalized over here in Power Rangers. The monsters were very much hit and miss for me, most of the annoyance coming from how many of them didn't match the thematics they tried to stuff them into, instead of playing on mythological lore for their needs. But again, this was a show where most of the fantasy references are from Western fantasy over Eastern ones. And while the show was ultimately successful, it did mediate concerns that Sentai may be a waning property, and the following year's bouncing of tones and audiences because of that didn't help things either. It's not fully the production team's fault this time, but I feel it's a symptom of Toei not really realizing what their audience was anymore and losing sight of who was, so aiming for the wrong targets while trying to bring new people into the fold, yet excluding the existing ones entirely.
Though that would end up occurring, just not in ways they may have intended, which more secured this show its notoriety. For as this series was wrapping up, Haim Saban was making his bid in America to create a show based upon the Sentai properties. Meaning, yes, it is time. Next week, it's Morphin time! Wait, that's right, I don't own any American Morphers. Huh.